Hello, and welcome to Waypoint, the AirMed&Rescue podcast, your place to hear all about the latest news and insights from professionals in the airborne special missions sector. My guest this week is Håkan Österhed from Flightcell, who tells us all about his career in aviation and the role that Flightcell plays in communication and connecting special missions aircraft for better operations. Håkan Österhed, thank you for joining us today. So Sweden itself, as you're Swedish, has had a long history of technological innovation as well as specific influential developments in aviation. Was this something that you experienced growing up, and were you encouraged to think of aviation as a career?
Yes, so aviation has always been a big part, but actually not from the Swedish innovation part. I actually grew up in Liberia, West Africa.
Oh, really?
So we had a small flying club when I was a kid, very close by, that we were always hanging around at. And then obviously we went back to Sweden like annually. So those 11 years always involved some airline flying. So yeah, and then it was the era of the Apollo 11 program and going to the moon. So all that is aviation and space kind of influenced me from the beginning, really. So. But yeah, this has always been a part.
Yeah. So you're growing up in Liberia. What was that like? And was it your family, your parents, were they working out there? What was the situation?
Yeah, my father, he worked for a mining company, jointly owned by Swedish, American, and Liberian companies. So he was actually in the railroad business,
right.
So nothing with aviation. But yeah, it was a nice place to grow up in.
And you said there was an airfield nearby. Did you watch the planes, or did you get to fly on the planes, or how?
I was up a couple of times. Yeah. In the early days when we went there was actually we flew the DC-3 from the international airport to the small airstrip where we lived. So
amazing.
Yeah.
So as an adult, you didn't start out in aviation. You did a long stint in the Swedish Army before making it to the rank of major when you left in 1989. What made you pivot to the Swedish Civil Aviation Administration and the Swedish Air Force Reserve that you did following your career in the Army? And what was your role in both of these organizations?
Yeah, so I actually applied to be an Air Force pilot, and but I was very young at that time, so they basically told me to come back. So then I thought, what could I do that would promote my opportunities? That's when I joined as an Army officer instead and applied for that program, and I actually enjoyed it quite a lot. Yeah, actually. So during my career in the Army, I was deployed and within the country, and you had some extra spare money, so I invested that in taking a private pilot license at that time.
Did.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that career path in the Army, at a point of time I had to make a decision: continue the career, move around all the country, or stay at the place where my children grew up. And so I did that, and then that's kind of where I made a decision to move to the Civil Aviation Administration, because it was an opening, and it really covered emergency planning and security within the aviation industry, also a lot of civil military cooperation. So yeah, it kind of fit my interests.
Yeah.
And in that, I also had an opportunity to kind of further explore my aviation. So I also got an instrument rating paid by the aviation CAA, since I was making decisions on operational stuff. Then it's good to have that in the baggage, so I know what I'm talking about. So when I left the Army, actually, I stayed on in the reserves, and at a point of time there, I moved from the Army reserves to the Air Force Reserve, which was natural with my new role then. Yeah, but it was very much in the transport there, so the management of the C-130 programs and the civil military cooperation of that. Yeah, so. But in the Air Force, in the CAA, I mostly the wider scope was emergency planning, so cooperation with civil military in those days. So this was the early 90s. So it was kind of just when the wall had fallen down, but we were still in the preparations where this civil society was being used to support the military activities. So there was a big planning for how to use the civil assets from SAS and Linjeflyg and those civil operators to support moving troops around in a mobilization phase. So that coordination was one of my responsibilities in the early days there. And over time, that wasn't that important as much because everyone believed in Russia's good will. And so that was kind of winded down. But then we started working a lot with crisis management training and risk assessments, but with another driven by other scenarios than just the military intervention, more from not very much work with preparing. And one of the programs that I initiated at the CAA was something we called the Swedish National AirMed&Rescue, which was a program to reconfigure an airliner like a 737 for mass casualty evacuation. So that was a program that we had in Sweden, and it was actually used during the tsunami in Southeast Asia back then. Yeah. So it's kind of, how it is. It evolves, and yes. I've been lucky to, everything kind of evolves around aviation and those kind of things. Yeah. So.
So you've obviously, like you said, you've got your pilot's license while you're in the army still. You got a little bug for it while flying to and from Liberia. What is it about the air industry, the air sector, and working on projects like the National AirMed&Rescue? What is it about that you really love? What makes you stick with it? What is it about aviation that I mean, I'm be talking to a lot of people listening to this who have that bug and call it a bug, but is it a bug for you, or is there something else, about it that you love?
It's difficult to define exactly, but I guess you can call it a bug. But it's a lot of things. So where I kind of have combined aviation with other of my interests, so like the ability to respond to people in need. So medevac, but we also had other programs that we did. So like if you have a natural disaster anywhere in the world, really, the assets that you need, the fastest way to deploy assets that you need is by aviation. And you don't really just need the actual aircrafts and helicopters, but you also need the staff and the organization to organize and manage and lead that operation. So we also had a program in Sweden where we kind of set up task forces of people in the industry being able to support that. So, but also with the aviation, in a broader sense, it never gets boring. No. I mean, aviation covers so many aspects of the normal life. So even if you're in aviation, but you can be like anything in aviation, and you get exposed to a lot of things in there. So and there's always some good stories to tell. But I'm that old, so when I actually started out, the pioneers were still living, and so the pioneers that started like some of the airlines actually were able to listen to their stories.
Incredible. So your careers included positions with links to air transport, emergency planning, medevac, disaster response, and communications, among others. So what, in your opinion, makes the aviation industry suited to helping out an emergency, other than its ability to travel long distances quickly, and specifically, what role does communication have to play within that?
So, I mean, it's very flexible as opposed to, speed and flexibility. So, as opposed to other means of transportation, you don't need you need a route on the map on the IFR chart, but post from that, you don't need any infrastructure really between point A to B as you do with other means of transport, really. So that kind of sets aviation aside as very suitable. And so you do like the long haul with normal airliners or military transport aircraft, and then the helicopters to actually get on the spot. So, but yeah, so how did I kind of get into communications? That's quite interesting because it was actually during the response to the tsunami. So we were going to initially deploy 2 aircrafts, medevac equipped aircrafts down there, and we had an organization in planning for this, but it was not fully completed, so we had to improvise quite a lot. And then I knew someone who had a satcom company, and this were there were still mobile networks in Thailand and everywhere, and we were kind of, the roaming was available. But I said we better go there and rent some sat phones and to send them along with them. So that's really the first interaction I had with any real devices. So and that was really useful because the cell networks down in Thailand, you could send the SMS, but apart from that, you couldn't make any calls because they didn't have the capacity to keep up. So so the sat phone was very useful at that point of time. But then, of course, it was a handset. So then you had the limitations of not being able to use it during flight and all these kind of things. And that's kind of where we lead into Flightcell, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. So you're with Flightcell, which is a company dedicated to improving connectivity and communication in aviation. So how did you find your way to this organization? Was it from your experience trying to find a communication that would help with aviation, or did you just come across them and you saw that they were doing something that you felt that there was a specific need within special missions and humanitarian relief and stuff?
Yeah, so a lot of things are coincidence.
Right. Yep.
So actually, when I left the CAA, I started a company. So we did some specific aeromedical evacuation equipment, and we did courses in crisis management training. And so I kind of was available a little bit to fill up my time. So I was approached by this company in Sweden where we actually rented those phones for the Tsunami mission, and they asked me to develop the aero side of their satcom business. So it wasn't a dedicated satcom. It wasn't a dedicated aero business. They wanted to branch off into the aviation side and support satcom. And one of the products in that portfolio was the Flightcell product. At that time, it was kind of the first generation of the product, and it kind of and the Flightcell products got more and more advanced and are very flexible. And in the projects I did over time, many of them had the Flightcell DZMX as kind of, that product was in most of the programs I did. So I knew the product very well. I got to know the team very well. And I think it was during the COVID times we actually started talking, and so in New Zealand it's a small team. Everyone is based in Flightcell team, everyone is based in New Zealand, and they were traveling. So one key person was traveling to Europe and looking after Europe, and kind of spent 3 months per year in Europe on the road. So I think it just evolved, that dialogue. And with COVID, no one could be traveling. And so we just ended up it was a good choice for both of us if I kind of start working full time to develop the business for Flightcell in Europe. But I also cover like Middle East and Africa. So this time zone really, but most of our business is really in Europe. But of course, I wouldn't have done that if I didn't see that we have a good product that meets meets the need and the requirement in the market, and yeah. So, but it kind of by coincidence ended up.
Yeah. Happy coincidences, so serendipity.
Yeah.
Yeah. So your experience led you into this. So what role does Flightcell play, specifically when it comes to special missions operators? How does having the world's smallest communication system or integrated flight data, audio, and video recording system benefit people in aerial firefighting, medical, search and rescue, or law enforcement?
Yeah, so the original Flightcell product, so our focus have very much been on the cell, so Flightcell. So that's for cellular communications. And the
Yeah.
original product, which was an idea from our founder, John Wiley, was to, he's a helicopter pilot. He wanted to listen to his iPhone music, the iPhone or whatever when he was flying. So he actually built the box that puts into the headset, and then you can plug in. So the box connects to the intercom. You plug in both the headset and the phone to that, and so that's actually integrated cellular into the craft. So and obviously we started out with cellular very early, and the cell networks haven't really been designed for an helicopter traveling at altitude. Is designed for the phone. So there are some challenges there, and we've been learning and taking on this challenging and developing our products over time to have as to be able to use the cell data capability. We also do the voice, but more and more we see obviously the data is the requirement, and obviously the cost benefit of using cell data as compared to satellite is it's huge, and I think that has positioned us really well in the market, because cell wasn't an add-on to something, an afterthought. For us, it's always been there. Always, we basically see satellite as a fallback, and not and obviously over time we have developed and improved our satellite capability also, and we do have customers who use our products with only satellite capability, but we actually do have customers that use our products with only cellular capabilities today. So you can have two modems that fall back on each other, etc. So and I think this has helped us positioning us in markets. So like 80% of our customer base is operating on helicopters. Those altitudes make them very suitable for cellular communications, and as the mission, they get more and more advanced equipment on board that needs to interconnect. We offer that through a Wi-Fi interface or a wired Ethernet interface to the equipment they have on board. Really, so really to any equipment they have on board, it's it's an easy integration with our device. So I think that have helped us position ourselves in the special mission kind of operations.
So as you mentioned, it's been an iterative process of developing and improving and advancing, and you've got a very incredibly advanced product at the moment. So, for instance, the DZMX Plus can transmit or receive patient data for a HEMS mission, or record bucket or tank performance for aerial firefighting, or talk to lost parties over, like you said, the cellular or satellite network for search and rescue missions. This is incredibly complex. So do your engineers and technicians collaborate on new technologies with the operators in special missions to design products that are fit for purpose, that sort of are targeted towards these abilities? And how do you manage to supply all these configurations into one small package?
It can be a challenge to get everything into one of these small packages, but obviously the engineers are a key part in the dialogue to develop these capabilities. So they can be. I mean, we're a small organization, so naturally our engineers, and they will be a part in the dialogue with the customers. So capabilities can be driven by what we see and hear from the market in general. So like further improving the cellular data capabilities, that's definitely in our path, and to always try to improve that. And what we see is not so much the speed, but more the reliability technology, because the systems they put on the helicopters and aircrafts, they kind of depend on reliable streams. So like you're mentioning the HEMS mission and the patient monitoring doesn't really require that much data, but it requires a reliable stream for that. But those have mostly been driven by general demands that we see. But then again, we do develop customized features for specific customers, and obviously there the engineers are really an integral part of that discussion with the customer. So we do have an API, so a software API. So we really see customers that have very advanced integrations with our products. So in a mission computer on board SAR helicopter, you can actually have a virtual controller of the Flightcell DZMX or the DZMX Plus in that equipment. So it's really versatile, and they use it for HAMS data transmissions. And so those are custom. But then we also have the regulatory requirements coming in. So we have lately grown very much in the oil and gas sector, and obviously there's recommended standards there. And so these are also things that our engineers are looking at and understanding those requirements, and how can we help the operators comply with those requirements. And they are not always like aviation regulatory requirements. They can be contractual requirements that the operators have. But yeah, so the engineers are really an integral part in understanding this, and is also, so we actually have all our staff. So typically at the trade shows you would have just the salespeople there, but we actually rotate our staff so they actually are able to meet face to face to some customers as well. And when we travel, we actually go visit customers as well. So it's really important for them, and also for them to understand the implications of, I mean, they want to innovate, but if you innovate and you do something, then that also puts requirements on the operators, because if you get a new revision or something, they have to certify that. And so it's also a balance there. But so it's really important to have the staff, I mean all staff, but also definitely the support and engineering staff, meeting the end users and understanding what they need, but also the implications of what they do.
And so the devices addressing the needs of multiple mission profiles, you've already said that if you innovate, then you need to get it recertified. Are there any sort of difficulties with making the products compatible with standards, with different platforms as well, and making sure everything integrates and everything's synchronizes? What would you tell operators or customers that are hesitant about installing Flightcell products into their own airframe or tracking service provider? How would you explain to them that you're going to do the best for the products to make it as easy to use, as compliant, and as fit for purpose as possible?
Yeah. So our approach is that basically all our products are the kind of standalone systems, so they don't integrate fully with the avionic suite, and they're really just designed to meet the specific requirement for like mission essential equipment. So typically the scope of an integration of the DZMX, the DZMX Plus, our safety voice services system, and our smart hub, which is the cockpit camera, audio, video, flight data recorder system, is the typical scope is a minor change or by an STC for that. We do have some of our OEMs that integrate it in the factory using their TCs, but that makes the scope of an integration can be fairly easy, really. But then we have many customers that, as I mentioned before, integrate them very much into mission pieces, etc. And for that, so those can be actually really very advanced. But typically, you could see like the DZMX and the DZMX Plus, it offers a data capability and a voice capability and tracking capabilities. And these functions stand alone to the aircraft avionics system. So in the easiest integration, you would just need the power to the unit. You would need the connection to the intercom system, so you can for the audio and also the antenna and on a non-pressurized aircraft, typically the antenna installation can be a minor change as well. So it can be, in most cases, nothing in aviation is simple, but it's like more simple approach. But then again, the more you want to integrate with the systems, so then specifically the mission systems on board, then obviously it does require some engineering, some testing, and we obviously support our customers if they have mission equipment that they want to utilize with the DZMX and the DZMX Plus as a data link capability. We support with that. And as for the Smart Hub, which is our cockpit audio, video, and flight data recording system, it does have an accelerometer integrated into the device. And by the way, the DZMX also has that. So we also have basic flight data, so we can report on exceedances, real life, etc. But that's also integrated in one. So you really don't need any external input for that. You need the GPS feed from an antenna, and then everything is used with the internal flight data recorder, etc. So, and one other thing that is the key advantage of our product is that we actually don't use any batteries in the systems. So that means that you don't need to actually send them back for battery replacement. So once you install it, it basically runs. There's no requirement for recurrent maintenance of the product. So we actually use on the devices. So like the Smart Hub is a recording device. Typically, we see implementations. So they have the battery in order to be able to kind of close the recording file. If you have an event that has a power failure, we use another format, so like a streaming format. So even if the power is cut, you can still recover all the data, although that part where the power was cut, that would obviously not be there. But so, and that's also been a deliberate decision during design for this.
And is there anything else that we haven't touched on about you or Flightcell, the products that you'd like to talk about, you'd like to tell the listeners about? You mentioned that there are these deliberate decisions and the products that are made with specific choices in mind. Is there anything else about these products or about the way that they're installed, integrated, or the things that they can do that we haven't mentioned?
So a recent addition to the DZMX and the DZMX Plus, which is also like an example of innovation that we do. So we've added a software-defined receiver, so an additional card into unit that we can now use to encode and receive maritime AIS information, ADS-B in normal voice communications, so an extra receiver module in there, and so that allows an aircraft operating in a maritime environment, so like a helicopter transporting maritime pilots out to the ships. They would like to have like an basic understanding of the maritime traffic. And with this, you can actually add that into the device, avoiding a separate unit that typically costs more, avoiding an extra LRU in the aircraft. And so for the maritime AI, we can actually output this information over the Wi-Fi or over an Ethernet. And so you can actually display it on your electronic flight bag, for example. Or with ADSB in, we can take that and over Wi-Fi display it on 4Flight, for example. So getting the actual live feed, line of sight live feed. And so that's the product we are seeing very much interest in. And that's basically the DZMX, but just an add-on, so another configuration of that. We are also seeing a lot of interest in dual cellular. So as I mentioned, the reliability of the signal. And with this, you can have like SIM cards from 2 different providers, and the system will automatically hop over there. We have recently also launched our Iridium Certus 100 terminal. That is an add-on to the DZMX and the DZMX Plus. So it does provide a satellite data link capability as well. So it's not everything with satellite is like cost benefit. So it's not like the Starlink big pipe, but then again, it's a different price magnitude to install and to use. And it's more very targeted towards what you need. So with that, you can actually use a WhatsApp application on your smartphone connected over the DZMX Wi-Fi and use that Certus terminal to have all the functionality of WhatsApp Signal or Microsoft Teams or wherever out of the box, but also used to update weather and those kind of things on the electronic flight bag when you're out. And we actually have one of the larger operators in offshore as a launch customers for this product. And I would also mention we also have a safety voice services product, which is the same small form factor as the DZMX. So an all-in-one unit under 1 kilo, one Iridium antenna and the device that provides A2C communications over Iridium satellite, and basically it replaces like a 40 kilo HF radio with complexity of HF antennas, etc. So that's also a new product. We had a military launch customer for that, and we've had the first deployment for civilian customers as well for that. So that's what is an example of a requirement from a launch customer, and we developed that. So we're a small, agile organizations that we can do those things.
Amazing. Well, is there anything else that you'd like to talk about?
No, I think that I can talk forever, but
I mean, you're most welcome to. But if that's it, then thank you so much for joining me today, for telling us all about your life and about Flightcell products and stuff. And thank you so much for your time, Håkan.
Yeah, thanks. My pleasure.
And that's it for this episode of Waypoint. Thank you again to Håkan for joining us today and for sharing your stories. And don't forget, you can visit flightcell.com for more information about the products and services that they provide. And thank you for listening today. Make sure that you subscribe to the podcast on your preferred streaming platform so that you'll be automatically notified of our next episode.